enough to put up with some guitar and background tracks like singing the choir. It's Valentine's Day. I'm not going to preach on, I don't really preach on secular holidays or anything like that. If you can't hear me, I'll try to talk real loud. So I don't ever try to preach on secular holidays. It's just kind of a rule I have. I preach the gospel, I preach Jesus. But Valentine's Day tends to be okay as a secular holiday. I mean, it's not really a Christian holiday, but I think that it's okay to talk about because it really is just about love, right? And ultimately, you guys know me. I'm that guy that just pushes the love all the time. I don't embody it very well, but that's what I try to preach on, is an unconditional love, because that is the gospel to me. That's my understanding of the gospel, is that before I knew any better, while I was out in sin, God loved me enough that He wanted to give me this gift just to let me know that I am loved. That's incredibly powerful, isn't it? So that's the whole mission. My personal mission in life as a Christian leader, is to follow Christ and to create disciples of Jesus Christ. Can anybody finish that saying that the Methodist Church uses? That's one of our, the key mission of the United Methodist Church is to create disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. See, the world needs transforming, right? That's why we have a change of heart. That's why we have that coming to Jesus moment. That's why we have this ongoing journey of grace and growth in our lives, right? Because we want to be more like Christ, and we need to create disciples. But our problem is we can't create disciples if we ourselves are not disciples, right? I mean, does that make sense? We can't honor that transformation in someone else's life. We ourselves are not actively seeking to be transformed in our hearts. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about just a little bit about our scripture. Jesus calling His first disciples. And there's a couple of different scenes, there's a couple of different scriptures that are really focused on around this time. But I love this particular one where Jesus gets up in the boat. Do you remember that one? The crowd is pressing in on Him. He's kind of famous at this point. He's got all these people wanting to hear Him. So he climbs up in this fishing boat that's nearby on the dock or pulled up to the shore, however it was. And he climbs up in it. The guy working it's Peter. He's washing nets. They've had a long night. They wore out. They didn't catch anything. You ever had those days at work or those nights where you feel like you've done a whole bunch of stuff, but you haven't done a thing? And that's the way Peter was feeling, that frustration, I can imagine. And Jesus gets up in his boat and he's like, golly, all right, do your thing. He's really polite about it. He's really like, hey man, get on my boat. So there's already probably a little bit of interest in Peter. But after Jesus preaches a little bit, he tells Peter, now imagine, long night, all night of fishing. They're washing their nets. That means they're really finishing up the day. This is like the last chores of the day before they go home and eat some leftovers out of the fridge and kick back with a cup of wine and watch some Gladiator TV. I know. So this is that last little bit of work there, and Jesus is like, hey, why don't we go back out, fish a little bit? Come on, let's go out and put out. And you can imagine too, Jesus is a carpenter, these guys are fishermen. There's probably that obvious, dude, you have no idea. But in this scripture, there's not much hesitation with Peter. It's really amazing. He's like, we've been out all night, we haven't caught anything. But if you say so. Those are really tough words. Kind of harken back to not my will, Lord, but yours. Peter says, if you say so. That's a hinge right there. That's one of those, when we read Scripture, we got to find those hinges that really change the direction or the power flow of a conversation or of a passage. If you say, for me to go out, cast my nets out, even though I know we're not going to catch anything, then we'll do it. Wow. Before Peter is even really called, he has embraced his need for a disciple. Someone in his life to help transform him, because he is not necessarily content where he is at. Maybe he is content, maybe life is good, but he knows that he can take it a step further in his life. Before Jesus even says anything to him about, hey, you want to follow me around for a couple of years while I teach you? Before he even mentions it, Peter is already ready to go. He knows. He has made that recollection and recognition in his own life that I need transformation. You see, this is where it begins. And this is where it ends with a lot of us sometimes. We forget that we need transformation. Still, to this day. That's what gets us to Jesus, right? That's what allows us to set our boat out a little bit. Because we know that we need transformation. And then somewhere along the way, we kind of forget about it. Somewhere along the way, our faith grows stagnant. Somewhere along the way, we falter. Somewhere along the way, something happens that puts us in a different direction, takes our time, takes our energies, takes our efforts, and we kind of just grow complacent in our faith. We talk about this a lot. But that's because it's our main theme. If you can imagine one theme in the human existence, it's God created you to love and be loved and in this garden of peace and perfection, and it is us that need to be transformed into that. That's our motto. We have got to be transformed into that. Constantly. So when we lose that personal prophetic edge, that voice that calls into our own lives that says, hey man, you're doing it wrong for a minute. Look back over here. Remember what God called you to originally. Remember what brought you to Christ originally. Remember that thing you said to God that one time when you were begging and praying for forgiveness or mercy, and you said, oh, I need to read my Bible more, I need to do this. Remember those things. Because those are the things that transform us and continue to transform us. But if we're not doing them, then we grow stagnant. It's just like anything. You know, I talk to both my brother-in-laws. They talk sports all the time. They know teams, they know stats, they know stuff. I don't know anything. I like watching highlights. I'm a highlight kind of guy. But they talk about it all the time. It's in their life all the time. They watch it on TV. They read about it. They read articles about it. They involve themselves in clubs and groups that are associated with sports and things like that. And they know what they're talking about. And it just flows out of their mouths when we get together at family functions. And I'm standing there with my finger in my nose, acting like I know what they're talking about. Long story short, that's what happens with us a lot of times. I don't follow the stats. I don't talk on the thing. I don't do all that stuff. And I have no clue what happens when those things start happening around me. I'm lost. Some of us are like that in our spiritual life, in our discipleship life. There's nothing in our lives. We don't talk about it. We don't read articles about it. We don't join groups and clubs about it. We grow stagnant in our discipleship, in our Christ following. It happens to everybody. I'm not harping on anybody. I'm in a lull right now. It happens to everybody. It's an ebb and flow of life. But what we have to be able to do, like Peter, is step back before we even know what's going to happen. We've got to step back and say, I need some transformation. I need to change something in my life or something in my heart for me to get closer to God, for me to get closer to being a disciple of Jesus Christ. There's something I need to change, and maybe lots of things. I got lots of things. I've got a list, and my wife keeps adding to it. things I need to change about. But we should all be that blessed to have a mirror held up to us occasionally. Because we are so easily forgetful. We don't forget, we don't remember that we need transformation. We get going on our stuff. We don't fill our lives with the stuff we need, the devotionals, the small groups, the Bible study. We lose track of it. And then when God is happening around us, because God's a verb too. God happens around us. We have no clue what's going on. We don't know how to interpret it. We don't know how to include ourselves in it. We stand there with our thumbs in our noses, wondering what the heck is going on, and why is this whole world so rotten? But we've got to remember that we need that constant transformation. It flows out of us, through us to other people. So, talking about discipleship. Our leadership team, when we met a while back, we talked about a particular book, and maybe you've heard of this. So this is kind of an announcement, kind of a message. There's a book called Canoeing the Mountains. Has anybody heard of it? I think I mentioned it maybe once before. Nobody's heard of it? Great, cool, because it's something I want to offer up for us. I am going to lead a book study here at church at a particular time. Those are to be determined, depending on who might be interested. So this book, Canoeing the Mountains, is about creating disciples in a world that when we step out there, we have no clue what's going on. Okay? So we have this double whammy of Christians sometimes when we have let our faith go, let our discipline go, let our Methodism, our methodology go, and we have become, the lost kid in the movie. We don't know what's going on. And even worse, when we step outside those doors, when you step outside your home, when you step outside your comfort zones, is anybody else a little bit lost about what's going on in this world today? I mean, I know this is every generation, but does anybody else just feel like, people are talking about conversations I have no clue about? It's like I'm walking into this world that I don't know, because it's so rapidly changing. That's the thing about it. It's so rapidly changing around us, and we're just getting swallowed up by it. I am, at least. I feel that way sometimes. But Canoeing the Mountains is a book. It's really cool. I'll describe it a little bit. I hope it turns you on a little bit to want to join this book study. It'll be a 5 or 6 week book study following Canoeing the Mountains. The idea is it follows Lewis and Clark. Does anybody remember Lewis and Clark? I know Bob does. It follows Lewis and Clark on their parallel journey with any organization, but especially churches today. Does anybody remember the story of Lewis and Clark? They started out on the East Coast, right over here. Correct me on anything that I'm. Do you want to go ahead and just? I'll lead it. Just correct me if I go astray.
All right.
Okay. So they started out over here on the East Coast. The core of discovery was banded together. The core of discovery was this group of men commissioned by the government to find a western waterway all the way to the Pacific Ocean, all the way to the West Coast. So they had all these networks of rivers and whatnots. Here on the East Coast, they wanted to connect to the West Coast, so they were commissioned to find the way over. Okay? So they're canoeing off the bat up these rivers and lakes, assuming that everything they've seen thus far will continue the way it is and be just the same up ahead. But what they don't anticipate, what they don't expect is when they get all the way up and they peak the hill expecting to see the West Coast or a long, beautiful slope out in front of them that they can gently cascade into the Pacific Ocean in all glory and honor and remembrance, they see the Rocky Mountains. Wow, what a shock. You came all this way, you expected this smooth sailing from here on out, and you're face to face with some of the most incredible sights and difficulties you can imagine. So what they do? Can't canoe a mountain, right? They They tossed off the canoes, they strapped on their hiking boots, and they kept heading for their goal. This book's about how us as a church, us as a people, us as individuals within our own lives, sometimes it's like we have no clue how to keep up. We are off the map. We keep expecting that everything's going to be just the same, the way it has been, our perfect little worlds, and then something happens that just completely shatters our dreams, our hopes, our goals. And we can stop right there, we can give up, we can sit in our canoes and cry. Or as individuals, as a church, as Christians, we can set the canoe down, strap up our boots, and head off the map, into the unknown. That's scary as all get out, right? There's nothing scarier than setting out on an adventure or doing something that you have no clue what to expect. Because you don't even know what you don't know. You know, that's the scary thing. But that's exactly what they did. Threw off their canoes, strapped them up, and they headed west. So we can do that as Christians, we can do that as a church. This book follows that inspirational story, that parallel line of any organization. Maybe you have a business, and you're interested in this too. It's a way to lead forward small businesses. It's great for them because sometimes it just seems like everything else is moving so fast around us, and we're trying to keep up. But this is a way that we can do that. That we can go into the unknown with confidence, with careful confidence. It's not how it's going to look, but it's what to deal with when we get there. So I'm leading this book study coming up very soon. I want to encourage everybody that wants to get involved. I will buy the books. I think it's that important. I think it's that cool of a book that can help us transform. Take this time in our church life, in our own personal life, to really transform into true disciples. And this will help us step into the unknown. So I think that's why a lot of us don't do it. We're kind of afraid. It's just that, I don't know enough, so I don't learn anymore, kind of stuff. That's how we are as Christians a lot of times, right? I don't come to Bible study because I just don't know much about the Bible. That's why we do these things. We don't come to church because we're perfect. We come to church because to praise God that we need healing, and He's the one to do it. We don't come to Bible study because we're the smartest kid in class. We come to Bible study so we can learn and grow and develop a deeper relationship with our God, our Creator, and our Savior, Jesus Christ. We don't come to prayer because we got to get a certain amount in, or our parole officer is going to bust us. We don't do those things for those reasons. We do them for our own personal transformation. And that's what this book is going to challenge us to do, and what I'm going to continually press and lovingly urge and nudge us constantly to make this the year that you really commit to some discipleship in your own life. And I promise you it will make the world of a difference when you go out there and you try to disciple, because it's scary as heck if you go out there and you don't know what you're doing. But Bible studies, small groups, book studies, things like this, those are the things that are really important to get involved with. I love to see huge crowds at our crock-pot dinners and all that good stuff. But I would love to see a full room for a Bible study. How cool would that be? How powerful could that be in your life? It's not just me up here talking head. It's actually living and embracing the challenges and the difficulties that we're having in our lives. Laying that against the template of Scripture, and with our friends, family, and loved ones, we can transform ourselves by opening ourselves to God. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. That's exactly what it's about, is that transformation that we must continually seek. So please, we're going to close with a hymn, but I want this to be fresh on your minds. If you are interested in this book study, come to me afterwards. Let me know in some way. I'm just trying to get a number of how many books to order. And once I get everybody together, we can talk about times. But if you haven't read a good book in a while, and you just want to read one too, this is a great one. It follows a pretty easy track. So please let me know. That being said, let's close in prayer. Lord gracious God, I just thank you for this time that we get to celebrate you, that we get to encourage each other, that we can follow your plan, follow your lead, that your will be done. We just ask that you continue to do that in our lives. Allow us to recognize our need for transformation and open ourselves to your holy, holy power. It's in your holy name we pray. Amen. And by special request and fittingly perfect song, as God often does, Bob and I talk about all the time. God works in our lives in just these crazy, weird ways. Everything works together. This was requested by Dick last week. Mr. Dick Tuttle requested, "Have Thine Own Way, Lord," number 382. Let's stand and sing our closing hymn. I'm glad you requested that, Big Toe. That's absolutely beautiful hymn. Absolutely beautiful song. That we should take that into your heart. Take those words you just sang into your heart. Take that melody into your life. And let it lead you as we go. Let God be in control a little bit. Let God show us the direction we need to go. And as always, let's be intentional in our outreach, inspirational in our discipleship.